Whether you've just started playing or have been at it for a while, mastering the art of strumming can unlock new sounds and rhythms on your guitar. Today we're diving into the rhythmic engine of guitar that brings the beat to your songs. Supercharged strumming. Yeah! And bass players, I don't want you to think that I've forgotten about you. We might just be talking about strumming on a bass guitar as well. What? Andy, that's crazy, strumming on a bass guitar? Sure. Why not? Maybe. We'll talk about it. Now let's get nerdy. I'm Andy Schneider, career musician turned guitar coach, producer, and author of over 100 books from my publishing company, Seeing Music Books. I was a high school band nerd, then a devoted jazz guy, then a backing musician for great artists in every type of music. From Austin to Nashville to New York City, I've learned from my musical experiences and the great musicians that were there with me. I'm a self-taught guitarist, but I was lucky enough to get the right bits of education early on in my career. Pairing that with the many conversations I've shared with more experienced musicians put me on the path to success, a path that built my skills to become the experienced, confident musician audiences enjoy today. I created the Guitar Nerd podcast to give you simple steps to building and growing your musical knowledge, having greater abilities, and getting that amazing music that's inside of you out and into the world where we can all enjoy it. Whether you're a beginner or experienced guitar or bass player, if you want to make fantastic music, you're in the right place, my friend. Now let's get nerdy. Welcome, everyone, to Guitar Nerd. My name is Andy Schneider. This is the place where we talk all things nerdy about guitars and bass guitars. Whether you're new to playing or have some experience, I hope that you're going to find something here to energize your music this week. Last week's episode was everything about pickups. It was a pickup FAQ. Because people do have frequently asked questions about pickups, and we got into the minutia of what makes one pickup one thing and what makes another kind the other thing and how they're built. Because it's important to know when you go trying to use it to an advanced level. Well, we got down and dirty with it in the pickup FAQ. That was episode 3, which is available on our website and everywhere you're getting your podcasts. This week, we're going to turn to strum up some magic with supercharged strumming. It's something we all have to do. And strumming is more than just moving your hand across the strings. It's a crucial part of your playing style. Strumming patterns can shape the song's energy and feel. Today we're diving into those basics of down and up and down, strumming essentials for beginners. And we're going to extend our reach into some advanced techniques that can transform your playing and bring a lot more musicality to your everyday. Now, everybody has a pretty good idea of what strumming is. It's down and up. It's up and down. It's moving that pick across the strings in a rhythmic fashion. And sometimes a highly variable rhythmic fashion, right? There's a lot of different rhythms that you could be strumming. And inside of that, there's some different expression tools that we guitarists have between our right and our left hand that can bring a lot of life to it. But first, let's just get into those basics, because just like basketball, I always go back to basketball. Just like basketball, it's all about fundamentals. It's all about fundamentals. To be clear, when I say down stroke or down strumming, it's moving the pick or your fingers. If you're the kind that uses just a middle finger to strum, that's cool. I do that as well. When I say down, I'm moving it from up towards my chest down to the floor. That's down, up, is vice versa. It's moving it from below the guitar up towards my chest. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're working on strumming, start slowly, maintain a consistent rhythm and volume. Very, very important. Sometimes when we're starting out, we're just happy to be making sounds and getting the notes correct, not clumsily fingering things. So it's easy to overlook those little details, but the sooner you do, the sooner you start listening for them, and I will show them to you in a quick minute. The sooner you start listening for those little inconsistencies and trying to eliminate them through your finger placement and through your strumming hand practice and technique, the further along you're going to be faster. I want you to listen for even volume between the low notes and the high notes. Not too much bass, not too much treble, and make certain that your sustain is good. That when you hit a chord or when you strum a chord, that it doesn't just die out. Oops. Which can happen if you're placing your fingers incorrectly. If you're on top of the frets and getting a buzz or something weird like that, it's not going to be a nice bell-like chimey sustain that lasts for as long as you want it to. You want every time you strum to be that bell-like chimey sustain until you're done with that note or done with that chord and you release it or mute it. Okay. Moving on to the fingers or your pick. Both are acceptable, as I mentioned. I use kind of a medium thickness pick because I've got somewhat medium strings on this acoustic. And electric players, yes, strumming is for you as well. You know that. We're going to need that later. But I want you to experiment this week with both methods of strumming with your fingers or your pick, no matter whether you're an acoustic player or an electric player. Just listen to the sound differences. Listen to the sound difference of using your pick and using your finger and asking yourself, when might I use that? When might I use that sound? One of them is probably your preferred favorite, but for the other one, when would you use that? I'm curious to see what answer you give. Put it in the comments for the show. Yeah, put it in the comments of the show notes or hit me up on Facebook and Insta and let me know what you think. Have you found a new way to pick? Now, the fingered strumming offers a much softer and more nuanced sound, while picks are brighter and have more volume and projection. Also, varying up the tone. You know the electric guitars have a tone knob, but we acoustic players have tone knobs too, and they're in our fingers and where we use our fingers and our picks. The sweet spot for strumming a guitar is usually over the sound hole, if you have one. I'm playing a guitar with F holes, those little French F-looking things on the side, little mirror image Fs. Those are called F holes. I'm playing one, so I don't have a sound hole, but if I did, that's where I'm going to play it here in just a minute. And if you want a brighter sound, move your pick hand towards the bridge. I'll give you an example right now. First, I'm going to play over the sound hole area, about, what is this, about 10 inches from the bridge. And then I'm going to play more like 2.5 inches from the bridge, okay? First one's going to be warm, next one's going to be bright. Here we go. Okay, do you hear that? A lot warmer over the sound hole, right? Brighter near the bridge. It's a constantly changing scale of brightness and roundness or warmness as you move towards the neck, warmer. And I want you to try this week, strumming in different positions, listen to how the tone changes. And more than that, Listen to your fingers. The strings are going to feel different underneath your pick or your strumming finger. They're going to feel different as they resist that pick hitting them. That difference of resistance changes very slightly how the rhythm is delivered, how it feels to the listener. How does it feel to you? Is there one position that perhaps makes you the most happy, where you get the best tone and it sort of feels good? When I play up near the neck or over the sound hole, the strings sort of feel looser, a little bit more forgiving. And as I play towards the bridge, they feel a little tighter. I feel like I have more exact rhythm control. That is an important piece of making great music, is having an idea not only of what tone you want, but also sort of the rhythmic content and how relaxed or tight you'd like it to feel. Songs are about feeling, and you'll need to be very versed in how to get different feels out of your guitar. So try strumming in different positions this week. Listen to those changes and let me know what you think. Now, if you're just starting out and you're dissatisfied with your strumming, I bet I can predict what it is you don't like. See if you don't hear one or more of these things that you'd like to improve. Because I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to tell you how to improve them. Are the note volumes of your chord, are they even or are they uneven? Are you hitting every note or are you missing some strings? Like, you meant to play 6 strings in a 6-note chord, but you only got 3 of them. That's pretty common. How's your rhythm? Is it clean? Is it exactly what you want? Is it right, tight, and on time, or is it a little clumsy? That's another one. And one of the most frequent, because this, frankly, is the biggest trick to strumming. How are your chord changes? When you move your fretting hand from one chord shape to another shape, are you getting there in time? Or do you have to stop the rhythm, place your fingers, and then get back to strumming the rhythm? All extremely common symptoms of beginning strumming. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to fix all 3 of these items: uneven note volumes, clumsy rhythms, and then clumsy chord changes, moving your fingers between chords. They're all pretty simple fixes. Let's first look at uneven note volumes. It could be that your picking hand is sort of missing the target. I always call it target practice because you want to hit the sweet spot of where you're going on the strings with your pick, the right velocity, in just the right place with just the right depth. And that's a lot of focus and attention. But you're going to pay that kind of attention to making sure that you're in control of it. So watch how your pick meets the strings, how fast and exactly where. The other thing that might be causing uneven note volumes, and this is just as likely a cause, is that your fretting hand might not be perfectly dialed in. If you are catching some frets and getting a buzz, or your fingers aren't close enough to the frets and you're getting a buzz, that can cause a nasty note, a real clunker there in the middle of an otherwise perfectly executed bell-like chord. So uneven note volumes could be either hand. Slow it down, pick it apart, figure out which one needs the attention, and only work at one at a time. Clumsy rhythms, okay. A lot of people have this malady, especially if you always are playing by yourself. It's very easy to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over because there's nobody else in the room pointing it out. There's no drummer playing in perfect time against which you think, oh, wait, I'm not playing in perfect time. Clumsy rhythms can be fixed with a metronome. Always have a metronome handy in your practice room. If you need to, go get a nice app from your app store. There are many, many free metronomes available now in everybody's app store. Or go get yourself a nice little metronome device to help keep time. And the other thing that usually gets in the way of great strumming is clumsy chord changes, moving your fingers between one chord and another. And there is a sneaky professional tip I'm about to lay on you, because it's very easy for beginners to think, I've got to lay down all of my fingers on the chords at the exact same time, right on the downbeat, all or nothing. Not true. Not true at all. You know, as I'm playing two chords, I often don't have the time between them. Things are happening pretty quickly. I don't have the time to move all of my fingers to the next location, bang, all at once. Professional players have a sneaky method that they use to navigate chord changes, and I want to give it to you. As you're practicing, I want you to try this out. First, I'm going to play a C, and then a G, and then back and forth, C and G, C and G. Listen to how I don't play all 5 or 6 notes on the downbeat. Count 1, 2, 3, 4 as I'm playing this. And notice that on 1, I'm going to play just the bass note, just the lowest note of the chord. It's easier for me to move one finger and be on time than all 5. Here we go. Okay, did you hear that? Did you hear how on the downbeat of each chord, I just kept it to the bass note. Kept my rhythm exactly the same, super vanilla, 1, 2, 3, 4. I just did that to demonstrate what goes through my head in keeping my fingers aligned to the chords. It's easier to move just one finger at just the right time than 3 or 4 fingers. So use that as a little forgiveness strategy as you put chords together. Don't be afraid to start the chord with just the bass note, the lowest note, and on the rest of the rhythm, pick back up. You should have time by then to get all of your fingers in just the right place. Okay, I promised a little strumming lesson for bass players. Can bass players strum? Of course. Why not? Why let guitar players have all the fun? There's a lot of room to be a creative bass player, and while this might be a very, very specialized technique, you might find a little place, a little moment in your supportive role as the bass player to kind of embellish and bring a new kind of rhythm or a new texture to that song that you're working on. So here's what I recommend for starting. If you want to try this on bass, try just 2 notes. And I wouldn't recommend starting anywhere near the nut. Using the low down and strumming usually sounds pretty muddy, sounds pretty clumsy and cluttered. Try up the neck, try above the 12th fret, pick out 2 notes. Any 2 notes you like, use them on the smallest strings, right? On the highest pitch strings. Start with just 2 like that. And if you're a pick player, great. Use that pick. If you are a finger player, try using your middle finger. Try using your middle finger, sweeping it back and forth. So I hold my hand kind of everything together, except for I let that middle finger hang a little loose, like it's a A chicken finger. I don't know. Is it a chicken finger? Like the finger on the chicken. Chickens don't have fingers, Andy. Like if it's a little claw. Let that finger stick out just a little ways and strum back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Give that a try. If you use effects, try that too, and then let me know what you thought of it. Did you find a use for it? Did you find anything about it that you think you might be able to develop and take somewhere? I hope so. Bass players don't get enough credit for being the creative creatures that we are. So I hope you give it a try this week and find some strumming fun in your bass playing. If you're a guitar player and would like to read more and practice more about the subject of strumming, I recommend checking out my brand new book, Acoustic Guitar for Adults, Book 1. There are some great examples of how to begin strumming, how to begin thinking about this, how to begin building more interesting and developed rhythms. And there is a lot to know. Between the right hand and the left hand, there are so many flavors and modifications we can put on that basic little simple strum that makes it sound more like music. It's worth looking into. Acoustic Guitar for Adults, Book 1, from Seeing Music Books. In fact, if you go to seeingmusicbooks.com, you'll find it there in the bookstore section. You got it going on. My will is strong, but I can't get it done. I can't get it done. Okay, this is that point in the show when we get to nerd out. Yeah, let's nerd out. This is for you more advanced players. If you've been strumming for a while, for a few months or years, and you're looking to add a little bit more polish, a little bit more pizzazz or finesse or just musicianship to what you're doing, I've got some ideas for you. The first thing to take a look at is how about getting control over those dynamics? Yeah, so you could strum along at just one volume. Like, what would happen if I always talked at the same volume and tempo? I always talk at the same volume and you would be bored with me quickly, right? Why not vary the dynamics of your playing? So I'll play a little example and change the dynamics. First, I'm going to play it without dynamics, and then I'm going to play it with dynamics. Here we go. Now there's a very simple example. Same rhythm, played two different ways. Didn't the first one feel a little bit more monotone, like the person was not really putting their thought at all into what was being played? But the second one seemed to have a little bit more flow, a little bit more energy and direction. And it's simply by varying the dynamics. I didn't change anything else about where my hands were at or the rhythm. Just by changing the dynamics, it all of a sudden added a dimension and life to my music. The other thing that can add a lot of variety and interest to your playing are fret hand mutes. Fret hand mutes. I'm a righty, so I would say my left hand, but my fretting hand, the one that goes on the neck and is fretting chords, release your fingering just a little bit while you're strumming so that the notes don't ring individually, but you do hear the rhythmic whack of the pick against the strings. Let me play an example for you. Okay, there were a few bars of simple eighth notes. They had a lot of variety and interest. The one and, the beginning of each measure, I was playing the full chord. And then for the other beats, my fingers kind of come to rest like little mutes across each string. So they're not pressing down fully and they're not touching. They're just touching lightly so that we get a big rhythmic sound. and you hear a lot of the pick against the strings. By varying our approach within a measure of strumming, we add a lot more interest, a little bit of chordal identification, and a little bit of just pure rhythm. It's a very nice way to distinguish one part from another. And one more technique to add interest to your playing is, why not use that concept I mentioned earlier of target practice, where you're aiming for a particular region on your guitar, on the strings. Aim for the lows in particular. And often in strumming, we're aiming for a nice, broad, sweet spot. But what happens if you aim for the lows and then aim for the highs, the high strings, and then aim for the low strings, back and forth while you're keeping the time up, while you're keeping your rhythm up? Let me play a little example of what I'm talking about. Okay, did you hear that? First, I played it the boring old way. Played everything the same, played every string the same volume, same. Vanilla. Then, I varied things up by aiming for the low notes for a down and an up, one and, then I went 2 and, 3 and 4 and, 1 and 2 and. So I went down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 2 lows, down, up, 2 highs, down, up, and repeat. 2 lows, 2 highs. And so I took an ordinary plain old vanilla part and added a lot of interest to it for very little work, just by thinking of being strategic and crafty in how I'm building the rhythmic effort. You can kind of think of this a lot like conga players. We should always be thinking about how other musicians do their job, because it says a lot to us about how we might do ours. Conga players, 2 drums only, and yet they create this storyline by thinking low, 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 high, high, low, 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 high, high, or down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. You can imagine a conga player playing that on his 2 drums, low, low, high, high, low, low, high, high. So this week, take a look at your playing and start adding some dynamic control, adding some dynamics to your playing. Try throwing in some fret hand mutes to get those percussive strums happening. And then try building some sub-rhythms by varying your attention, your target of your strum between the lows and the high strings. Today we looked at the basics of strumming and how to keep it solid, supportive, and feeling great. Then by paying attention to a few things like dynamics and tonal variation, we're able to add a whole lot of interest and movement to an otherwise static and boring old rhythm. That's how great guitar players do what they do and create great strumming patterns that are memorable and support the song. Thank you to everyone who's been subscribing to this podcast and supporting us on social media. It's always great to see you out there. Drop me a note in the show notes or on social. We're on Facebook and Insta at Guitar Nerd Podcast. That's GTRNRD Podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to practice easy for big results. Yeah, we all could use bigger results in less time. You've got great music inside of you. Let's get it out and into the world for everyone to hear. You can do this, guitar player. This week, continue experimenting with your strumming patterns and observe how other guitarists are using strumming to bring music to life. Until next time, have a great nerdy week. I'm Andy Schneider, and you've been listening to Guitar Nerd.